Now, I think for now, what I need to do then, firstly, is to apologize, give an apology on behalf of Commissar Moss. He's held up somewhere, so he's not able to actually join us. So you will actually have to bear with me as a stopgap measure, so to speak. And on that note, I'll then like to welcome you all, comrades, for this critical session. It's a continuation of the previous sessions we've had since September last year. And hopefully we can match up or come closer to match up to what Commissar Asali did last time. And, if we can, and actually just get down on issues and policy issues. To help us with that, we've actually invited two comrades who actually understand these issues very well. One is.
I was asking, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Yes. I don't know what was happening. No, I've not gone to sleep because I could hear you very well. I know that you were almost close the topic. But I think the question of what are we renewing should actually be central to us, because unless we know what we want to renew, we are not able to renew anything. And for me, if the renewal is about values, then it should take out individual interests and look at the values. But there's a point that was raised about the posture that former President Mbeki taking around this issue, which should be able to take us back to a particular statement that he made when he was the president of the ANC, that the masses can't lead. And if we look at the posture that we are taking now, we are focusing on individuals. We are actually trying to redefine the ANC. It is not a renewal, it's a redefinition of the ANC in terms of the people that we attract, the people that we must take out to a point that we may look like the party. I know the next point will be more about the party. But and as a communist, I know that we've always said there is no communist who is not a member, who can be a member of the ANC. So I thought that I should raise that point. I know it is vague and is broad, but I agree with the fact that there has not been a clear definition of the content and context of renewal outside of the corruption and all those issues. Thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you very much, Comrade Abdul. I hope you got a long time. Haven't seen you in a while now, but at least we see each other online. Yes, going back to our topic, I think then we should proceed with Comrade Johnny. We'll give Comrade Johnny just a few minutes to introduce himself. And then, of course, his co-presenter, who is Brian Ndlovu, will also do the same just briefly. And then we'll actually get on with the presentation that they actually have. I will be helping them to flip it through, and Comrade Johnny will actually be leading the presentation, and of course, Brian will then be able to add and support, in that, of course. Then we will follow the normal format where we open issues up for discussion. Okay, now, Comrade Johnny, if you can hear me, the floor is yours, my chief. Just briefly, for the comrades to actually just.
No, thank Comrade Matik. I think for purposes of introduction, let me for a moment put the video on.
That's it. I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna do the same.
Just to prove that I'm. Good evening, comrades. As you have already heard, my name is Johnny Mokhala. I've got a very funny name together, Chairman Mao Zedong, but for purposes of traveling, I was known by Pitaleveli. So In short, that's who I am. I'm presently serving on the Military Advisory Council. Why I do not know.
Sorry, there is an echo there. I don't know which side is it coming from. Can we mute anyone who's not talking? Can we get them muted, please? And then we can have Comrade Johnny speaking without being disturbed. Okay, let's see if the problem is actually coming on your side, and then we can see how we can deal with that. Okay. No, that's fine. I think. Okay. We have a problem of comrades. Anyone who's not talking, can we actually have them muted, and then only have one? The only person who must actually unmute is the one who's actually talking at any given time. So thanks, Comrade Johnny, for that brief introduction. He missed one thing. He's my boss somewhere. So I actually carry his bags, and that's a great honor for me, to effectively learn from him, and I'll be working with him. Our top boss is here, but I'm not gonna embarrass him. We'll actually just leave him, for today on that. And of course, he has got legal brains as well. So that's actually very handy given the content of today. Brian, go ahead, my chief. It's your turn to quickly introduce yourself. Now, unmute. You are muted.
Ish, this thing, son of technology. Yeah, my name is Brian Kesaninjogo. Yeah, I'm a member of MK. I live in Tembisa. I don't know if you need more than that. Currently, I'm underground. I'm not deployed anywhere. I'm in the private sector. Yes. I hope it's enough.
No, that's fine. I think what I can add on Brian is that of course that's something that is actually quite common. There was a time where he was a medical in the camps, and that's actually involved quite a lot in terms of saving people and actually just helping comrades in that type of environment. But the other issue that's actually quite important for him, and actually think for that, him and his brother, they're definitely going to paradise if there is really a place called paradise, is the type of work they've actually been doing post 94, where they've been literally picking up pieces of our own comrades blown up by dark forces of apartheid, and it is not a very easy job, and he has been doing it diligently and with his bigger brother Ambrose, and we can always be inspired by the type of work that they actually do. I do think then, having met them, so we should actually be comfortable that we are actually dealing with people who will be able to help us with this. And something else that Brian has actually left out is that he has been quite involved when it came to some of the underground work, specifically in the area of Ekhuleni and SDUs and all that. So it's an area that he actually understands very well. And Veli being his MK name. Okay, we then leave it there. Comrade Johnny, do you want us to take us through the presentation, or how do you want us to do that? I'm happy to just keep flipping that for you.
I'm trying to, yeah. No, Comrade Malik, I'm a very funny animal. I'll deal with the presentation, but in the best possible manner that I think should be.
That is perfect.
Which is, I wouldn't want to go slide by slide, because you would imagine that one slide scientifically represents 3 minutes.
Okay.
Now, with about 10 slides, that's 30 minutes of what will probably a lot of hogwash. But I want to zoom into a number of things.
Okay.
In other words, the slide being a guide. For instance, I would want to start somewhere in the middle of the presentation.
Okay.
And the reason is this. I think the short title of the Constitution is much more important than any other part of the Constitution. But before I even get into that, I want us to move from a platform which we are all familiar with and which we all understand, and say, by the way, what is Umkhonto Wesizwe Military Veterans Association? Now, if you look at the slides will then say to you that the purpose is to come with an organization replacing MK and MK National Council. Now, this organization then therefore becomes the sole voice of ExMK combatants. Now, that statement on its own presupposes then therefore that the structure that will come out with might invariably not be called MK National Council or MKMVA. But I want to move from a premise that says MKMVA is an association which, from the very beginning, was or is supposed to be supported by all ex-combatants. So coming back to what we had, the discussion we earlier had, here is the question. Do we want to renew MKMVA, or we say we have dropped a clay pot, let's rebuild a new clay pot, a new and better clay pot? So that decision should be a decision that is taken by conference, with a clear understanding that whatever we come up with should be foregrounded on the fact that an association of military veterans has got no life in perpetuity. There will come a time where there won't be one single MK veteran. Therefore, what people usually say, they would question, is the ANC affair with the fact that there's an association called MKMVA, which is supposed to be a desk in the Secretary General's office? That is, in other words, the fact that if you go through the Constitution of the African National Congress, you won't come across MKMVA anywhere in the Constitution of the ANC. So what this means then, therefore, is that this structure is a desk in the office of the Secretary General. So it's an appendage to other existing structures of the ANC. That's the first thing. But from the beginning, Umkhonto Wesizwe existed or was formed at the behest of the African National Congress. So then this tells us that from time to time, we'll take heed of what the African National Congress is saying as policy direction of ex-combatants. Now, so what am I dealing with here? I'm dealing with the structure. And what am I proposing as the structure? I'm proposing as the structure the following. One, that what we call the structure is not at this present moment important. Whether we call it the National Executive Committee, whether we call it the High Command, whether we call it any other thing, it's not that much important at the present moment. But what is this thing? And what are we saying in preparation for the all-inclusive conference that is envisaged? Clearly, the all-inclusive conference that is envisaged in this climate that we find ourselves again as members of the ANC should not be seen as an elective conference, because it is when it becomes an elective conference that we forget about any other thing and only concentrate on who gets into a leadership position. Now, how can we achieve the all-inclusive conference not becoming an elective conference? Is if we say, democratic as we might be, let us not have an oversupply of democracy. Let us first determine the size of the committee that we want to have, how big it has to be. And I've been playing with numbers in my head. And I realized that we might have to confine ourselves to a number not more than 30. Why? Because I think if we all agree that recognized or somewhat maybe elevated detachments in the African National Congress, I mean, in the Umkhonto wesizwe, were 10. Now, if we have 10 detachments and we have 9 provinces, we already have 19 people. Then, therefore, what is it that we are going to the conference for, except maybe confirming the 9 reps from the provinces? And this is a very dangerous presumption. It's dangerous because this thinking is based on saying there would have been provincial conferences before the National All-Inclusive Conference. And we all know that there is only one province that did something that we can say it's a unified MK cadres, and that is the Eastern Cape. All other provinces are going to the conference still divided. So to get a provincial rep might still be another conundrum that needs to be resolved by the conference. But the envisaged end result is that each province must have a person representing it in the national body, and that each detachment must have a person representing it in the national body. More often than not, in the ANC in particular, I see us first electing people and then expect the people that we have elected to go and draw a program of action. And my view is we rather have first a program of action, and when we have a program of action with clear projects that are actionable and have milestones and deadlines, we then say, what type of people do we need to drive this program? And we then go to who are those people. So I'm saying, if some of the things that we are going to be dealing with as ex-combatants are, one, the welfare of ex-combatants, two, ensure that ex-combatants are empowered to become better citizens. Three, to ensure that ex-combatants lead in the struggle against emancipation of our people. Because we should never ever fool ourselves that we are emancipated if we are still not delivered on a number of the 5 pillars of our national democratic revolution, which is non-sexism, non-sexist, democratic, united, and prosperous. We might think we've delivered on democracy, I'm not sure. But clearly, we still don't have a prosperous society. We still don't have a non-sexist society. We still don't have a non-racial. In fact, we are regressing. I mean, if you still see people driving around with stickers on their cars written Shumela Venda, you are still dealing with issues of tribe. How far are you going to go to achieving a one, or let me put it this way, how far are we in achieving a nation? How far are we in resolving the national question? If I still see myself as Mupedi Tweed, the other one is 110 Zoom, 110% Zoom. So I'm saying these things, it must be ex-combatants that are leading in driving these things. The other thing is that how far have we gone as ex-combatants to write our own story, our living story? How far have we preserved our constitution? I mean, our heritage. How far have we ensured that the work of Umkhonto Wesizwe is memorialized? If a person wants to know about Umkhonto Wesizwe, where do we refer that person to? Where will this person get the heroics of Umkhonto Wesizwe? And who's better placed to make sure that that happens, except ex-combatants and cadres of Umkhonto Wesizwe? But theory is something, but we need practical things at the same time. What support can be given to members of Umkhonto Wesizwe to participate meaningfully in business, in entrepreneurship? I can say that we managed in the past 2 years to take no less than 800 ex-combatants through entrepreneurial courses. But that is too little. We need to do more, because our community, the community of ex-combatants, it's an aging community. These are not people who still seek employment. These are people who must be empowered to be employers, not employees. These are people who must be skilled in entrepreneurship, in how to create jobs. And whose task is that? And I would imagine we all agree that that should be the task of the association that represents them. This one is a bit thorny for me. When we talk of being ethical, maintaining some element of integrity, what is the role that as ex-combatants can we play? Earlier on, we were talking about how corrupt the system is. But this corrupt system, let's look at it closely, comrades. This system is as a result of the corruptee corrupting the corrupter. This is as a result of the corruptee corrupting the corrupter. Those of us who sit in offices and are decision makers, when we are approached by outside business and they want that and that, it is us who ask to be corrupted by saying, what is in it for me? So if we start there as the MK community to make sure that we root out that tendency of a corruptee corrupting a corrupter and not allowing a corrupter to corrupt us, I think we'll move a step forward. So there are many other elements that you can bring in. You will realize of the presentation I just tabulated about her. But what is it that we actually need to do as Umkhonto weSizwe? First, we need to define who we are. Okay? What do I mean by that? Are we military veterans or are we liberation war veterans? The difference being, I'm an ex-combatant of Umkhonto weSizwe, but I never served in the South African National Defence Force. And whenever you visit my home in Atteridgeville, you find my sister-in-law. She will tell you how many doors they had to replace because the police will come and kick them in. So they themselves, other than me being an activist, they went through a particular trauma by being related to me. What do we call them? Are we saying they never participated in the struggle, or are we classing them as something else? Which then brings me to another element, and a very dangerous element. And I'll just go on top of it and I'll not get into it because I'm nicely briefed that someone else will deal with the issue. Last 2 weeks back on Sunday, when we were preparing delegation for the national conference, it took us from the morning until 2:30 before we could start with the business of the day. And what was at the issue? The issue was verification, but not verification in the narrow sense of the word. It was verification insofar as it relates to, among others, the self-defense units. And we must ask ourselves the question, who trained the self-defense units and in whose instruction? And once we can resolve that question, we then have to come back and say, what would be the best way of verifying the self-defense unit? We are clear, no one born after 1977 can rightfully say he's an MK veteran, because it would mean that that person was trained when he was under 16. And we know that Comrade OR signed the Geneva Convention not to train child soldiers, and he wouldn't have allowed anyone under 16 to be trained. And when we're doing the whole question of integration, special pensions and so forth, you remember there was a cutoff age because of this very same element. Now, in the camps, when did training stop? And inside the country, because there was training inside the country, when did it stop? When is the cutoff date? Is the cutoff date the 16th of December 1993, or is the cutoff date earlier, before 1990, or in 1990, for instance? So these are the things that we need to to resolve. Now, other than that, if a person was trained inside the country by a verifiable commander of Mkhonto Wesizwe, can that person be regarded as an ex-combatant of Mkhonto Wesizwe? Now, more often than not, some of these people who are training others inside the country have passed on. Who then verifies this person who was trained in a house somewhere in Mamone, in Rasukukune? So how do we then deal with those things? And I think the conference must pronounce itself on those aspects. Let me, comrades, make another dangerous assumption. And the dangerous assumption I'm making is that I'm talking to people who understand the issue of military veterans and probably understand it better than me. And just zoom in on what I envisage as a possible structure. Rather than the National Executive Committee, we would need to have what I will call subcommittees. And the following are suggested. A subcommittee of socio-economic support, a subcommittee that will deal with issues of heritage, and a subcommittee that will deal with issues of business support, and a subcommittee which will deal with emancipation of women. This is very necessary, comrades. That's why one of the decisions taken by the prep committee was that in the next conference, all of Mzana will be delegates. So when you choose delegates, you don't choose Mzana because every member of Mkhonto Wesizwe, every Mzana member of the Mkhonto Wesizwe is a delegate to the conference. Two, when you look at the issue of detachment, you would realize that on the books, national, we have about only 20 members of Lutuli detachment. In Sweden, I know we only have 2. So we are saying all those that can carry themselves to the conference are delegates. And you know, one comrade was saying to me, he's a member of the June 16 detachment, and we're saying they must give us 37 delegates. And he said to me, you know, if we give you 37 delegates, the next morning 3 will be dead. So we are an aging community. How do we ensure that the structure that will come up in the all-inclusive conference take cognizance of the fact that we are an aging community? Are we afraid to be swept by the Young Lions detachment and the Banimulukwane detachment? Martin Noche Moncada, June 16 and going to Isandwana and Sasso. Are we threatened by the emergence of the Young Lions and Banimulukwane? I had one guy saying, no, I won't even mention his name. I just remembered who he is. He's a former general. But he was saying no general should lead the structures of military veterans. I'm not sure about that. I'm just putting it there. Comrades, like I said, I was going to zoom into certain things. But what is the relationship that we envisage between ourselves and other fraternal organizations and the alliance? We know that when Mkhonto Wesizwe was established, strictly speaking, it was driven by the South African Communist Party. The ANC was not very easy to warm up to the formation of a military wing. So we need to have a formal relationship with the ANC as the mother body and the South African Communist Party. And there's a suggestion that the ANC and the South African Communist Party must have ex officio status in the executive of Umkhonto weSizwe. I'm not particularly sure, but what I'm sure of is that the Peace and Stability Committee, which is at Luthuli House, must be a structure that organizational ex-combatants will use to, on a more immediate basis, communicate their aspiration to the African National Congress. As a true politician, after conclusion, let me summarize by saying, I hope for a broader and more discussion other than the snapshot that I attempted to give. Let me thank you for this opportunity, comrades, and let us talk. As Hamlisaneni, Makabani, but always remember, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Comrade BJ, for that. Indeed, you did open up our eyes. I think now we will be able to have Comrade Veli taking over, Brian taking over, so that at least he can also just breathe on the issue. And Brian, you let me know if you want to take it freestyle, just like Comrade Johnny has done, or you want to make a reference to specific slides. If it's freestyle, that is still fine, because then what we will do after you will just make sure that comrades have got the slides, and then maybe we can just put certain emphasis on some of the slides, or rather refer what Comrade Johnny was talking about and whatever you will be talking about back to the slides. So you decide, Yamazan, how you want to handle this, but go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, comrades. I think I'll use the same approach that Comrade Johnny has used.
Awesome.
You have realized that he has asked more questions than providing answers to a number of questions because of their complexity. I think the same will come from me, and I assume every person will raise more questions. So I want to suggest upfront that we might need a follow-up discussion. After the comrades have gone through the slides, I think we need to have a follow-up just to refine some of or consolidate our engagement. And let me start by saying the dilemma that we're facing today is that the ground has shifted. The politics of the country has changed. We're not sitting where we were sitting as MK under the ANC. Now we're sitting as MK under a country that is actually under a multi-party system. That seeks to say any other party can assume a position of power anytime. Now, this seeks to then pose a question to say, where do we actually belong? Because we seem to be singing many tunes at a time when we talk about our relevance in what we have achieved as a new dispensation. One, we want to emphasize our loyalty to the ANC, but also wanting to claim on the progress that the country has made. You can't just be at two places at the same time. Somewhere we've got to make a clear, draw a line. The point I'm trying to raise is, do we belong to government or government and society? When I say, sorry, to the state and society as a whole, and I'll come and clarify that point. Or we belong to the political party or the ANC as a liberation movement. If we claim that we belong to the ANC, it means our life it will depend on the survival of the ANC. Our relevance will depend on the influence that ANC will continue to have in government. If you look at the nature of our politics, the us and them, will never, us and the DA, celebrate a national event in the same venue. That seeks to tell us that should the ANC not be in power, even the relevance of our history will just disappear. I don't see those parties even supporting the legacy of the ANC. That will include our own legacy. So the downfall of the ANC will sink with us. Now, back to this question, and why I'm raising the importance of this question is that it's a question of choice, whether we want to be viewed as the ANC or we want to be viewed as national heroes. That's where we need to draw a line and work backwards to say, if we are national heroes, who is responsible, who has an obligation to look after us in terms of socio-economic upliftment, in terms of participating in the organs of state. I'm talking about continuing to make a contribution this time, because that's what we think we have an obligation to do. But who is going to accord us the space if we don't accord ourselves a space? This seeks to say we need to begin to craft that niche or that special space where we can play a role without being questioned by any political party. Meaning that we have to decide between the allegiance between the party and the allegiance to the state. If we insist that our allegiance is to the party before the country, then it's a different decision and discussion. But if we decide the country comes first, we seek to then say what will be our role going forward in terms of our attitude towards corruption, things that ANC does wrong. I don't want to go there, you know, the Zondo Commission and many other things, that people that we deploy in government. Are we then going to be able to take a stand if we remain within the ANC? That is a big question. But if we want to say that we belong to the state, then the state must look after our welfare. The state must look at how best can we get a socio-economic upliftment, and also continue to play a role in providing capacity in government in terms of the cluster, providing, sharing our expertise, embarking on other programs, which I'll come back to that. But let me then pass to another point that we need to then look at. We need to avoid the situation that we are in now, that the weaknesses of the ANC have placed the military veterans where they are today. Whether it's through negotiations and ceasefire or disbandment of MK, we are where we are because of some of the decisions that did not look into our future. Now, are we going to pay a price and say we are going to burden the MK cadreship or the new organization with the responsibility of renewing the ANC? If that is our attitude, then we're going to spend the next 30, 40 years until we all die trying to fix the ANC. So it's a discussion that we had at the beginning, that it cannot be the burden of the new structure or MK cadres. It has to become the problem of the ANC and its cadres, which is inclusive of military veterans. Now, I'm trying to reposition our thinking in terms of we need to see ourselves as agents of change. We are who are going to enable society to move forward with our expertise, the level of politics that we have, and many other things, without being embedded in the politics of a particular organization. But we need to balance the two. The same way the party are members of the ANC, but they're able to stand outside and articulate their position as a party without crossing lines. It's a view that I have that I think we need to sit as military veterans, individual as members of the ANC, go and fix the ANC from within. But we cannot sit as military veterans wanting to then pronounce on issues of the ANC, which are now internal. And I'll give an example that we're trying to move away from some of the experiences where some of our cadres will go out and make pronouncements on behalf of MK cadres without consulting them, right? Without getting consensus on the issues that they raise. But they just say we speak as MK or as MKVA, we automatically represent all MK cadres. We need to move away from that scenario and say nobody will then articulate or take the structure to go and march in programs that are not related to matters of military veterans. But again, we need to be able to say, when we march to the ANC, Does ANC have capacity to address our socio-economic needs? Obviously, no. Does not have a capacity, it can pay for its own employees. Why are we then wanting to burden the ANC by issues that's supposed to be addressed by government? We are a burden of government, not of the ANC. That's where I think we need to draw a line. But let me come to another point is that then we need then to say, if we are a burden of government, we need to craft our relationship with government in a very, very smart way, without implicating the ANC in terms of the socio-economic situation of the military. We must speak as military veterans. The Act provides that platform to say, government, address our issues. I'll give an example with the issues that were raised by Comrade Lindu Sisulu in Ekurhuleni, the criticism and stuff like that. I'm not too worried about what she says, but what is key is that she has been in government. These are issues that should have been discussed in government. If she has failed, we should be able to stand outside as military veterans and confront government and the presidency to say, you are not dealing with our issues, without dragging the ANC into those politics. So we need to be very, very, very careful when we deal with those issues. In terms of our role going into the future as military veterans is very, very key. I'll talk about issues where people are making money, but also how we position ourselves. On issues of gender-based violence, for example, we should be able to stand as that organ or that institution and articulate these issues. We don't have to be females to be able to talk about issues that affect our women. We can articulate that as a structure, but we can also partner government in this specific area with social development. We are able to develop programs like we can set up our own gift of the givers, where there are disasters and any other thing that affects our communities. We are able to go there. The same way the army is going to municipalities to go and assist. Nobody is asking a question their political allegiance or loyalty. Everybody sees them as this unique resource that is actually accessible to everybody and people can trust. That's the kind of trust that you need to build, to say, we are military veterans. If we have to train people to go and address issues of COVID or whatever, we can do it the same, to say, can you train our people in these areas so that people can go and deal with those issues without being asked their allegiance, because you won't go in the area where DA is actually in charge. We've seen it with the issues of Cubans recently, that these are some of the political decisions that we need to begin to review and say, how do we align ourselves with the changing political environment? Now, like I said to you, there are a lot of programs in social development that people are tapping into that are making them rich in terms of rolling out programs, earning a good living in there. You don't have to work for somebody. But these programs, they can actually help us to do that. We can build capacity amongst ourselves, but also train members of the community. We can create training companies that specialize in certain areas and actually tap into that. It's very good money if those who know that particular area. Now, let me deal with issues of membership, the issue of verification. I want to give an example. We sat in Tembisa one day in a meeting and somebody was making a claim that he has 40 or 50 people that he has trained. And we said to you, who trained you? You could not justify or explain where you come from first. We don't want to deal with the 40 people, but that's the mistake that we're making. Everybody goes into a hall and say, I'm a military veteran. You're not going to verify me because you don't know me. They're correct. Because some of them are criminals and not actually military veterans or members of the SDUs. What we should say is to call it the commanders of those units or people must come forward and declare and say, I'm Commander XYZ, I've trained so and so, here's a list of 40 people that I've trained. Then we are able to ask that person questions. Where did you train them? How did you train them? Who instructed you? Because we fall into a trap of going directly to individuals that we don't even have control over. That's the risk that we're making. One day they're going to beat us up. And people are going to beat us up are people that we cannot account for. Because we don't know them. You can't verify people that you don't know. Commanders must declare them and subject them to a particular process. That's number one. Also, you must understand that when we talk verification, you're dealing with process of state here. We are actually enabling people to go to access services from government. These services can be costed in terms of how much do they cost. If you're going to benefit for the education of your children, we can put a price to those. It is important that if I'm a commander, I must write an affidavit that says, I'm declaring so and so is the member of my unit. If anything goes wrong, I take full responsibility. Same is the person that I'm declaring must make an affidavit. What it seeks to say, the choice is mine. Whether I'm prepared to die for somebody who's not a military veteran for my own selfish benefits. I need to be able to draw a line. But until such time, nothing holds me accountable. I can bring even 20 other people that pays me money because nobody is actually accountable. So we need to rethink and refocus our energies in terms of the verification. That let's verify the commanders first. Let them then declare our people. If somebody has died as a commander, that commander was not alone in a unit. It would be very easy, rare situation. Someone would say, I was trained by Comrade Viva in a Kurulane and he has passed on, and I'm left alone. Nobody else can vouch for me. There's no way. There's no way. So I'm saying we are putting ourselves in a trap by not wanting to go through a proper defined process. We've done it in the past, and people were not willing to be verified. If you're not willing to verify yourself, you remain outside, but the train must move with those that are verified. Currently, the people that are holding the organization hostage, and it serves those that wants to see, they want to perpetuate this unity and inability to organize, because they use that all the time to say, no, this thing cannot go without me verified. You come alone, and you're going to go inside alone. If you don't want, you're going to stay outside. But it's a choice that the person has to make. I've dealt with issues of political affiliation, obviously, and I've talked about the issues of our impact into society, that we need to begin to define that in terms of interventions that we can do, advocacy programs that we can carry, not only deal with issues of ANC, but we're talking about issues of national interest. We're able to sit as military veterans, even invite other military veterans from other formations and say, can we discuss the issues of national security? But I've seen a developing trend in some of the, what we call it, chat groups, where we are mixed with other formations, where people are beginning to challenge the ideological standpoint of the ANC or certain issues, because their organization are in a minority. They can't get the platform to do that. And we've invited them into doing that, because we lack discipline to redirect the energies of these groups. They criticize our organization and the government and the party. We also criticize the government and the party with them as well. It's what we must always avoid, because it's our party that is in government. We must at all material times protect the ANC and further clarify things that are done correct, because we must stand and say, we claim this achievement. But when we make mistakes, we must own up, but must have a smart way of actually addressing these issues. We just cannot become our own enemies and perpetuate the kind of attack that we've been getting from other parties, and now we've taken their side. So let me possibly maybe just to check if I've covered everything, just one issue here. Yeah, I think let me stop there so that we can, I just want to touch this one thing that Comrade Johnny raised, that we must always remember that we are in a contested space. The former SADF are contesting the same space as military veterans. There has to be a difference between us and them. We cannot punch below them. We must punch above and say, we actually brought this dispensation. You are here because of us. And we must be authoritative to be able to do that. But we cannot do it when we belong to a party that is also perceived to be corrupt, to be doing things in a way that is against what the society expects from them. So that's why I'm saying that let's also be able to deal with the ANC from our side and say, we'll be ANC members individually, but as a collective, we actually defend defense of the Constitution. We've got to be vocal more than the other organizations that are emerging today, wanting to claim that they are champions today of democracy, whilst they were there standing against the same achievement. Let me stop there, Comrade Malik. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Comrade Brian. I think then what I'll do, because I'm also mindful of the time, I'll just quickly flip through this 6, 7, 8 slides so that at least we can contextualize everything we've actually heard, and then we go to, to actually hear everybody else, so that you actually understand that the purpose of this presentation that they've actually given, obviously, is to throw ideas around. and actually find some form of consensus on some of the critical issues that they've actually touched on. The issue of professionalization of our voice as XMK combatants and of course our families, right? And of course protecting the mandate and the capacity to advocate for ourselves, even in the event of political paralysis as we have now. How do we make sure that we are not where we are again? That's the second reason why we're here. Of course, the third one is to say, how does the new structure ensure that Mzana is fully empowered to execute the never-ending struggle for complete women's liberty and death of patriarchy? We cannot claim to be revolutionaries if we are chauvinists. It's the two; they cannot coexist in one body. Certainly not in one mind. So that struggle, as Brian has actually said, we don't need to be women in order to assist this, but we also have to be mindful of issues of self-determination. We can't be telling women what to do and what not to do. They should actually be telling us, and then we should throw our full weight behind that struggle, because these are not only our women, they are our mothers and sisters, our daughters, and everybody else. Yeah. So it is our struggle. How must the structure and its members behave in public in order to enhance its image and protect its legacy? These are issues that comrades have touched on. Generally speaking, of course, the idea here, this is what Comrade Johnny spoke about. Are we building from scratch or are we replacing anything else? Now, the issue is there is nothing now that actually exists. So we might learn from what has existed before, but there is nothing. We're creating something new. We can name it whatever that we want to name it, but that is effectively that. And of course, it's about, at the end, it's about providing support and advocacy to our own community, and make sure that the state does all the things that Brian and Johnny have actually mandated. And of course, these are working proposals. Comrades will have an opportunity to send in writing to me or anybody else who can forward those to us. I'm a clerk, so I just collate all those things and then make sure that they are actually submitted to the powers that be, to deal with them. So if you've got any inputs, then you're going to forward this. But these are the proposed, aims, if you like, is to make sure that, again, we have a very clean image. We are able to work, and make sure that our voice is heard as far as support is concerned and socio-economic issues, as Comrade Johnny has said, and it's fundamental. And of course, there are certain issues that are quite important, and Brian has mentioned them. Lead the political re-education to defend the gains of the revolution and deepen democracy in the ANC society. Now, of course, we have to actually take those in the context of us being caught up in political debates and the diminishing opportunities or fortunes of the ANC. And of course, the issue of factionalism, we will not survive if we don't reject factionalism and having our leaders, in the ANC coming to divide us, seeking our support in one way or another, over the other. We shouldn't be involved in any of that, because we are where we are today because this is what happened in the past. Yeah. Now, of course, who is the target for? Comrade Johnny has actually covered this, military veterans, and of course, Brian has actually covered the issue of the SDUs and has given us a sense of how these should actually be verified. And I can tell you this also applies, for instance, to other provinces where they were not necessarily SDUs, but I know in the PE area, Eastern Cape area, there is a whole painful issue about Amabuto that they actually have there. Now, I think the principle should actually apply if they were trained by a verifiable MK commander, then those should actually be counted as XMK. And of course, there are a whole lot of units like those in the country. We mentioned Ponderhaven Military Wing in the Western Cape, which was linked to Comrade Ashil Krill there, and of course others. Of course, issues of verification. We're not going to touch on that. Brian has actually said, that we need our own processes, but fundamentally, we need to check the commanders themselves. And we can then look at that. If someone says, "I trained this," and then they need to know, okay, which camp did you train in, and how did you actually get to the position where you can train people? That is quite important. Now, if there is any important aspect, of course, everything else that Johnny has touched on and Brian have touched on are very important, but this is fundamental. This is the heart bit of their entire presentation, is to say we need a structure that will protect the mandate of its existence effectively, even if actions exist. So the proposal then is to have a higher structure, which have the high structure between conferences should actually not be the NEC, but it should be a National High Command Council or National Governance Structure, whatever label you want to put in. In the conference, the NEC must be elected. Of course, all detachments must be represented, and the office bearers must actually be represented there, right? And of course, provinces as well. That should constitute your NEC. Then these will actually then second their chair and the secretary general into this national governance structure, where the chair of the of the top six and the secretary will then play a role of a chair, of that National High Command Council. Of course, when they collapse these, then whoever is left in that structure, which will actually consist of what Comrade Johnny mentioned, as potentially subcommittees of this high structure, socio-economic support, heritage, business support, women emancipation. Of course, we are political animals, right? So there has been calls for a political commissariat. Now, this can either be part of the office bearers, the top six, or it can be a standalone as well, led by a commissar. It makes sense to separate it so that if there are squabbles that collapse the elected body, because the reality is we'll go to a conference, we'll leave the conference without being united. This is guaranteed. It's going to take time to have unity. But if that unity doesn't come, we should not collapse with it. So this is fundamentally important. Now, the other thing that Comrade Johnny has mentioned is the issue of national security. Now, there is a peace and stability, but we know in our country there is no peace, there is neither peace nor stability. And that's because we've taken a very narrow view, of that. So the idea is we have well-equipped and experienced comrades within our ranks who should actually be taking a lead in forming a study group that will be a national security study group. And this should then influence the ANC policy and seek to influence the state direction on national security issues, national security being defined in its broadest terms. Ethics, like Brian said, and like also Johnny said, non-negotiable. There should be an ethics committee, and this should be staffed by people who have got no interest in leadership roles. And the people we expect not to have any interest in leadership roles of the new structure is anyone in the Veterans League, because they can help us there in the Veterans League by pushing our agenda instead of crowding us in this new entity that is not even given a league status. So we want those people there to actually make sure that ethics, now the ANC and the SACP, obviously they, as our parents, they've got a role in our survival, or they should have a role in us. Of course, the ANC has been quite key in dividing us too, through what we see in Eguhuleni and elsewhere. Those are problems that we need to resist and make sure that they do not take place. And of course, it does make sense if we decide to keep the current relationship with the ANC, where we are in Lutuli and all those type of things. It makes sense then that the patron-in-chief of military veterans actually has got a direct sight of what's happening with the welfare of comrades. So, preferably, the ANC president, the secretary general of the ANC, uh, or their representatives, they should actually be sitting in this National High Command Council, so that they can actually have first-hand understanding of what the problems are. But most importantly, as long as the ANC is still in power, we should be able to actually influence them, in terms of making sure that they carry, our cargo to the state. So that's effectively what we meant there by having them as actually being represented to short circuit the communication line, which is quite long. Now, of course, there is the whole issue of criteria of how we elect leaders. Ethics, fundamentally important. Comrades must actually prove that. Two, they must prove that in their previous capacity, before people can say they can lead us, they must say, yes, I have done this and this and this and that for MK in particular and for military veterans in general in my previous deployment. So that at least we can know that effectively they can do the type of things that they're promising us. What you don't want is people who will actually seek to have a second bite on their careers while they're stamping on our heads. That has to end. Code of conduct, again, not much on this, but most importantly, these are things that they've got to do with how we behave, disciplinary issues and all that. But most importantly, some of the things that we need to reflect on is what Brian spoke about, us taking sides on ANC fights. We support this faction and not that faction and all those things. That's a problem. We shouldn't be able to do that because it's not only dividing the ANC, but it's going to divide us as well. We should probably avoid that. Now, of course, there is the other issue about the fatigue, like camouflage. There's been a lot of unending debates about this. We need uniformity and resolution of the specific issue. We have the Eastern Cape, for instance, with a very nice uniform that they have for military veterans. And we've got the DMV uniform. And we have got everything else in the middle. We need standardization so that if we are to be a professional body, we have to project that to people so that at least they can actually see. Now, this is exactly what you mentioned, the issue of politics. These are things that we need to ponder on. We don't have to answer all of them today, but we need to ask ourselves, must every member of this new entity be an ANC member? Or once someone leaves the ANC, either becomes apolitical or go to something else, then they lose their membership. Those are issues that we need to actually understand as to are we going to continue that tradition? And if we are, what happens in the event that the SSCP decides to stand for elections in competition against the ANC? And some comrades go with the SSCP. Are we going to kick them out of that? Those are issues that we need to actually understand. And clearly, this is very comprehensive. There is a lot that we need to think about. But right now, this is your opportunity to ask questions or add inputs in terms of trying to assist us in achieving exactly what we need to achieve. The floor is yours. Any takers? If you can just lift your hand. Yes, Abdul?
Yeah, no, I thank you, comrades. I am tempted to agree with your earlier suggestion, unless you want to vary it, that we should write to you. Because if we start opening a discussion now, there is a lot that has to be said, and there's a lot of us. I know we're about 22 here on the platform. Yeah, so based on your guide, I will then find my way forward, whether I should input or I should wait for that process where I can write. But if you can also, I don't know if you have our emails. Email us those slides so that we're able to follow up on some of the issues that we may have missed.
I'll suggest two things.
If you say,
okay.
Yeah.
Now I was going to suggest three things. One, if everyone can then just write their emails on the message box there, so that at least we can have them and we can distribute this. Of course, we'll also share them on WhatsApp groups, and comrades can actually share them widely. That's quite important. And then, of course, then one of the things that people can do is to send the written input either way. Now, that doesn't mean we should not engage here now because we're here right now. We can engage not issues, but what we're saying is we won't be able to cover everything comprehensively here now because of time. But comrades can actually give us highlights of some of their views so that at least we walk away from here with something.
Okay, let me shoot that. I'll just deal with 3 points. I've got a lot, but I'll deal with 3 points. Thanks, Mhlala, for your input. On your points, I will agree with the cut-off of 93, because after 93, we never experienced this high level of violence, particularly in Gauteng and KZN, which necessitated for the SDUs. And then, so I think that's the point that what would suggest. On the point, and I'll link it with what Malik was asking. On the point of the structure, I would suggest that yes, if you propose 19, it does make sense, but exclude the Thuli detachment and rather ask Mzana to have a direct representation as well. And I'll tell you why I want just to exclude the Thuli detachment. There's something called Council of Elders, people who can always intervene. I know the ANC has this Veterans League, but these are soldiers who were in a detachment, and as you said, they now less than 20. But these are people who can always call you and say, Bafana Bablana Neapet. And when there are problems, they are empowered. So you then create them as a separate structure which sits either, whether you want to call them just as Council of Elders, who provide guidance, who are able to intervene when there are problems, but they are empowered. Now, Brian raises some important points. I think principally we must agree that we were a structure of the ANC, whether the party was there or not. We're a military wing of the ANC. So I think that should be our departure point. And I'm raising this thing in the context of the point that is of affiliation. For me, there are 2 points there that we are dealing with. It's us as part of the ANC from which we take cue, but there's also a point of how do we transform SANVA and how does it serve the interests of all the military veterans across the political divides. And I think that's a point that we have not engaged on. Because I think that all of us should, the SANVA should have the list, the CPR list there, or the list of all the former military veterans, and be able to assist them where there are challenges. And I think that's the point I want to raise. The last point that I want to raise, which Brian raises, and I'll start with the story. In Tembisa, we tried this thing of verified people. And one day I'm called into a meeting, it is a Sunday. Brian and some comrades are sitting there, and they've called me to verify someone. Interestingly, he was my cousin. And I asked him a question, where were you? Which MK were you in? And he started talking about the trade union movement and so on. And we closed that discussion when we finished. So I think it's very, very important that we we do that. Where I have a problem, and I've constantly raised this problem, those of us that demobilized, we did our biographies, we took them to the SADF at that time, or the camps and whatever, and were demobilized. There was a CPR list. Why? What is the problem with the ANC, with us, MK? Pulling that list and say, here are the people, and then do a roll call. These people, this one is still alive, this one is gone, this one is still alive. And our problem becomes lessened because we are now only verifying people that are not on a CPR list. I don't understand how you try and verify somebody who already has a false number. And then you come with the determination that this person is not a military veteran. I think that's something we're creating ourselves a burden which is not ours and which should not be ours. Let me rest my point there.
No, thank you. Just one thing. Then I gave to Commissioner Sadi on some of the things that you raised, starting with the last one. I'm personally not aware of any verification process where people who are in the CPR list are being verified. So you are correct in that suggestion. I think people are being, where there is a problem, it's mainly people are not in the CPR list, and those in the main are comrades who are actually trained either internally, part of underground, or part of SDUs, and the SDUs being the most problematic ones, to verify for the reasons that Brian mentioned. So if you hear comrades talking about problems in verification, mainly it is around that one. So that's just one part I wanted to actually just clarify on. And then I give Commissioner Sally. Okay, sorry.
Okay, sorry to create. I'm not creating a dialogue. I was in the underground, and I did demilitarize. And at that time, you took everyone that you knew, and you did that. And it was before people thought of these creative ways of doing, any other funny thing. So I think that if you did not, if you were in the underground and you did not demilitarize, your commander or yourself should be able to give a detailed reason why you are not there. A detailed reason, not only that I trained you. Yes, you were in the underground from 1985, but you did not demilitarize. What was the point? Why did you not do it? Then unless your commander is able to do that, then the commander is lying. But everybody, if I recall well, we did not only demilitarize people who came outside. We demilitarized everybody who was associated with MK. So I rest my point.
No, that's fine. I mean, maybe let's leave it there, but you just need to remember that there were also comrades who, I mean, I know a number of them, personally, were actually in the camps, but they were at school. Some of them, they effectively were busy, left behind cleaning up bases, and then others, they just didn't want to have anything to do with MK or ANC. And they are nowhere in terms of that, but their comrades who are known. Like some of them, they are ambassadors. They are known. Like they've been commanders. In MK. So, but I don't want us to get involved into that. But your point is taken. I think one of the next things that we're going to look at is the whole issue of verification process as a standalone on its own. So we will take to that. But of course, submitting your written proposition is actually very helpful. Thank you very much. Now, Commissioner Sally. Did Commissioner Sally run away?
Commissioner, are you
okay? Sorry, I was wondering. I wasn't hearing you. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to waste too much time by thanking the presenters with this very important discussion they have already opened for us. But I think in terms of the presentation from Comrade Johnny, I just want to correct two things.
Okay.
Firstly, that yes, our Commander-in-Chief did sign the Geneva Protocol on the age of not training the young people or the children and so on. But we did have comrades who were 15 years of age. So I think it is important just to correct that we did have comrades of that age in the camp.
Yes.
And number two, also to say it's not everybody that only needs empowerment in terms of them being employers, but we do have comrades who are at the age where they want employment, not only to be employers, but also employment. Okay, my contribution then in this discussion is that the question that Comrade Brian has asked, I think it's at the heart of where we should begin. Because the importance of that question is really raising a sobering thought, because it is pragmatic and it has no sentimentalism in it. It's at the heart of what identity we want to assume for ourselves when we come out of that conference. And I believe that in answering this question, we need to be clear about what exactly it is that is at the core of why we want to unite as MK cadres. And it will help us to identify what in essence and what is critical, and that is at stake in terms of our survival as a collective, and also which is very critical also as individuals. The issue of political affiliation or us standing on our own without being an appendage of the ANC, I think this is very critical. Comrade Brian is coming with things that are very, that are a reality of our situation. To say the ANC right now, which is true, the ANC, even if we can say we want to continue in terms of being an appendage of the ANC is not going to be able to help us in what we want. This is my view. The government, the state, is the one that is responsible for ensuring that the lives of military veterans are improved. There is an act that covers us all. But as MK, we need to identify ourselves then, as Comrade Brian has said, in how are we going to exist outside, exist within the context of the ANC, but at the same time, being able to access what the state is supposed to give us. I passed that one. And then my number two is on the issue of verification. I want to agree with how the verification is supposed to be approached, because we cannot pretend as if the current verification that is happening has already come with some problems with it, some challenges that need to be dealt with. We know this is a presidential task team, but it affects the conference that we are going to be holding. So it is important, therefore, to deal with these issues. I see that in the presentation that you have read, Commissar Malik, you talk about the appeal process. I am not sure what the local standing of this appeal process that we're going to put in place is, because I know that in terms of the Act, there is an appeal board, which is legislated, that is under the Ministry of Defense. But within the context of MK now, which is not legislated, how are we going to ensure that that appeal process works? And as I'm asking, what is its local standing? And how will it relate to the appeal process that is legislated? Okay, in terms of your thing, again, you talk about women representation in those structures that you spoke about. You say 60-40, and I don't know why it is not 50-50. Maybe that question will be answered. And also the question of 6 years, the office bearers, or is it the, I don't know, I think it's the office bearers are supposed to serve for a period of 6 years. I think 6 years is too much, as you have already pointed out that we are the species that is extinct at this moment. So 6 years is like a lifetime. I think it should be shortened. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Commissar. Just a few things, and I mean, in the main, you have everything correctly. So let me start with the issue of numbers. Um, it could be 50-50, right? So the issue is less the quantity, of representation, but when you look at the numbers, and this is what Comrade Johnny actually reflected too. I mean, touched on physically in terms of today the warm bodies that are available. If you were to, you won't be able to necessarily have a 50-50. You will run out of women. You'll practically run out of women. And that is because traditionally women in MK they were about 30%, but with mortality and all these other problems, so you actually have less and lesser. But a 50-50 is fine. I mean, it is really not an issue at all, if we can find them. So let's just put it that way. It is something that can be changed, because it is just an idea based on what was felt as it's practically available, but then also guided on some of the Gauteng conference nominations, where I think women were given about 100 or something like that, and then the rest had to share that. So when we looked at that, it looked like a 60-40 type of arrangement. But it is not something that cannot be changed. It can be quickly changed, so it's not a problem at all. There is no ideology behind it. Let me just put it that way. And then the issue of the locus standi of the appeals, you again, you are 100% correct in this. But the issue here is this: there are two processes. MK knows who MK trained. The state will actually have to get that information in some way or the other from MK, because the state did not train MK. That's effectively the nub of the whole issue, is that whereas there is a process by the presidential task team that is going ahead, already the flaws of that process are coming out clearly, as you've indicated, because some of the people who were actually hands-on involved are excluded by that process. But that's a state process we can be able to deal with, where MK must have its own process to say these are the people who are allowed to come to our own conferences, and these people will be able to fight for. And part of that fight for includes fighting for them to be fairly, their cases to be fairly adjudicated for by the state processes, because the state, in all fairness, its processes can be judged as irrational at some levels, because they cannot actually claim that people were not trained when they do not know who trained them, and that people who actually trained them are verifiable. So that's the effect of that. It's a local standing within ExMK. And then, as part of the support and advocacy, that group should then be able to take the fight on behalf of its own to the state processes. And then, of course, if then it means ExMK submits an appeal on behalf of them, if they were rejected by the process led by General Mushwala, but on our side, we know that these people are real, ExMK, then we can submit an appeal on their behalf. But of course, there are certain appeals on our own situation as well, where people sometimes say, "Oh, my commander is dead and I can't find this and this and that." But then there are other people that they were trained together with him, or her. And then in a case like that, then that case might actually be reviewed based on new information that supports that. That's effectively the idea there. But of course, these are ideas. They can always be improved and effectively addressed and changed whenever there are other ideas that are coming on board. So that's just a quick response to that. Mshongo, Commander Mshongo, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Malike. I just have two comments. One is that on what your Comrade Brian was talking about, just to reinforce maybe what Comrade Sally was talking, is that in terms of verification, I think what Comrade Brian was saying, that a message should be sent to all the commanders of the SDUs from underground, a formal letter maybe from what the Minister of Defense to all the commanders of the SDU, and then those commanders then come and give their report of who they trained, who they did not train. So it's easier to verify that way, to check that way, than the process we underwent in Birchwood some time ago, and because I think that if we're not careful with this, there will be bloodshed over this. So we need to find a way of addressing that problem without having bloodshed, without having anybody going to General Mashala's house to go and shoot outside. We don't want that. So, and we need to prevent that. So maybe what Commissar Brian was saying should be one of maybe the resolutions that we should maybe adopt in the conference. After the conference, say maybe this is how to verify all the SDUs that were operated by getting their commanders and their commanders writing a report of everybody that they trained in their areas. And in a case where the commanders have died, their commissars, because we normally have commander and commissar, or members of that unit. But that is the way to handle it without bloodshed. I'm concerned with it, comrade. I remain concerned. Comrade Brian knows my view about this, of course. We've been talking about this for some time, that unless we handle this issue properly, there would be unnecessary bloodshed. People thinking that they are being taken out of the feeding scheme, and by certain people. Obviously, unfortunately, when you are June 16, then you are the target. They think it's you who wants to deny them all the benefits. So I think it should be handled that way. The other thing I wanted to say, which I think it's a reality that we must face reality that the ANC will lose power at one stage, because the ANC is an extremely corrupt organization. And we, as former MK, we failed to prevent the corruption taking place. When the group just took over, the Watson took over, they took over in front of us, hijacked the ANC in front of us. And the reality is that ANC is likely to lose elections in the next year. Now, if it loses elections, where are we as MK veterans or former MK veterans? This is why I think it's important for us to look at ourselves as military veterans connected to the state and government rather than connected to the ANC, because we don't have control over the ANC. We don't have control over the ANC, and it has been destroyed in front of us. We could not stop the destruction. We could not stop the hijacking of ANC in front of us. The Guptas, the Watson, they took ANC in front of us, and we watched it, and some of us did nothing. So we have to face reality. It might lose power in very soon, and when it loses power, where are we as former MK veterans? So I think that's why we need to cement, find our relations with the state, government, because in the Western Cape, for instance, is the DA that's running there. What is our situation there as military veterans? So we need to start looking for ourselves there, because children otherwise might suffer because the ANC has lost power due to the corruption we failed to control. Yeah, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Commander Mshongo. Comrade Regan.
Good evening, comrade. Can you hear me, comrade?
Yes, if you can be a little bit louder, but we can hear you.
to be a bit louder. Okay, so let me start off with this process of verification. We in the Western Cape have spoken about this a long time. MK, ExMK combatants need to have a roll call. We need to have a roll call. In that roll call, the commanders, all the commanders must be there to verify each and every member. Then we must compile the original list, because even the CPR, there is members that have been excluded. Even in 1994, the South African Defence Force also removed thousands of comrades from the CPR list. So, and we in the Western Cape have experienced that, because in June, I think it was June 1994, more than 1,000 of our Qaedas were sent back from Walmansdal back to Cape Town, and we were removed from the CPR. So for that reason, we need to have a roll call so that the commanders can confirm. And that the commanders is no longer. There is those that have trained with those ones that is still alive, and those ones can verify who are the ones they have trained with. So once we have that roll call and we have the final list from MK, that this is the verified members, then we can compare that list with the DMV and see who is not accommodated within DMV. And then we must demand that those people immediately must be added onto the DMV database. And at the same time, we will also then be able to see who are the ones that is on the DMV list that has not been recognized through our roll call process. Then we will identify those ones that claim to be MK, but is not MK. So yeah, that is my point on the verification. And then I support that sense of the one comrade that say we need to have elders or a veterans group within MK from the Tuli detachment and so on. Because remember, there is a lot of members that no longer want to be actively participating in the processes. But if you approach them information or for guidance, then they will gladly do that. But they don't want to be actively distracted. And that is also where I come to have a problem, where we automatically qualify people because of their detachment, or because they are a woman, or because of that and that. Because some of these people are not interested in becoming a member of the structure, the top structure. They are open to be there as a member, but they don't want to be in the top structure. They don't want leading positions. So that makes the automatically qualification process a problem. So yeah, that is that one from the elders and so on. And then regarding the ANC position, whether we must be with the ANC or whether we must be in the government, the problem is that a government can be changed during an election. And when the government has been changed, like we in the Western Cape have experienced with the DA, they change everything here. And all ANC-related members are being thrown aside. You can't give an input. Once you are an ANC member, they say, no, we don't talk politics here. We are busy with the government stuff. So politicians just stand aside. So that is how the DA is running the Western Cape. Yeah, cutting out all people that is related towards the ANC. So if we are gonna allow to be only within the government, then what happens if the government gets changed? Then we will also sit with the same predicament that we maybe not going to get our benefits. Our benefits is going to be taken away from us. So it's imperative that we actually have to fight, that the ANC must be renewed, the ANC must take back its responsibility towards the people, and that the ANC must grow up again. So it is very important that the ANC mustn't die, it must stay alive. That is my point regarding that. Yeah, I think I will leave it for over there for now, comrade. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Regan. Odi, go ahead, my chief.
Yeah, my chief. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thanks to Commissar Mushala and Commissar Brian for the nice presentation. Myself, I'll just comment on some few points. I'll start with the first one, the notion that we're a dying species. I don't subscribe to that notion. We've been held hostage by that notion for the past 15 years. And the truth of the matter is that is false. We're not a dying species. MK is still having members that are 45 years old today. And MK, as we stand today, it's a structure that is bigger than the Veterans League. The Veterans League has the voting powers. It doesn't have a provincial structure. It doesn't have a regional structure. And let's remember, how did the Veterans League come into being? It was after us having fought and pressurized the ANC that we want a structure, then they came with the Veterans League in an effort to make sure that MK is not given the voting rights. Secondly, above that story, when we were deprived the voting rights, it was said we are going to be ex officio in all the structures of the ANC, starting from the branch to the NEC. We are not in any of those structures as the ex officio today. Therefore, this is another own goal from ourselves, whereby we continue preaching the story that we're a dying species. We're not a dying species, and it is very important that as MK, we need to have the league status, because the league status are going to give us the influence that we need in the ANC. What has caused us to be marginalized? Our marginalization is attributed or associated with our wrong or skewed definition of power politics. We believe we can survive and sustain ourselves without power. That's a wrong notion. It doesn't work that way in politics. That's why everybody in the ANC marginalize us, because they know that we've got no voice. They respect the Youth League, they respect the Veterans League, because they give them a certain degree of votes and they've got influence in the ANC. Therefore, nobody will ever listen to us when they know that you're not going to give me even 1% in my ascendancy to power. Therefore, it's very important that we must solve this thing of us not having any voting influence, because that's what makes us to continue being marginalized by the ANC. If we don't want to be marginalized by the ANC, we need to have some political influence within the ANC. Then secondly, the issue of us and the ANC and the power of the ANC. The conference of MK, the one that we're going to, I think one of the fundamental things that this conference must do, it must come with a structure that is going to come out and help the ANC retain power. That is so fundamental. And that should happen in less than 2 years. MK must go and save the ANC. And if we can exist...
Sorry. Can we get anyone who's not muted, please?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, can you go ahead,
Yes, if we believe that we as military veterans or as members of MK can survive outside the ANC, we're dreaming. That won't happen. Should the ANC lose power in 2014, the first thing the opposition is going to gun for is the DMV. The DMV is going to be scrapped. And all that we're dreaming about is going to be chucked away. Therefore, if we want to continue having something about our legacy, our history, the benefits for ourselves and our kids and all that, we must make sure that the ANC remains in power. As to how, it's something that we can discuss in the conference and after the conference. But it is important that we must make sure that the ANC becomes strong, the ANC is able to solve this problem, the ANC emerges very powerful from the conference of December, and be able in the next coming 18 months, attend to its challenges and be able to prevail in 2024. Because if we don't do that, we're all going down the drain. I think the comrade from Western Cape is telling us the truth, that those who are under the DA administration, they know. They don't want to hear anything about MK, ANC, or any other military-related stories. Therefore, if we entertain the notion that we can leave the ANC to go down and expect that we can survive on our own, I think we're making a big mistake. Then lastly, on the verification part, I think also there's something that we need to also check very deeply. Yes, we're very passionate about certain people who need to be part and parcel of the process, be verified and all that. But let's check the element of MKMVA. It's a legislated process. MKMVA is an association that is supposed to be part of SANFA. And SANFA is also a legislative body. Therefore, it is possible to have somebody who was a member of MK not having military veteran status. Currently, the legislative process prescribes that a person who gets benefits is somebody who's got the veteran status. Therefore, we can have thousands of members of MK, and those members of MK, they must go through the legal process to get veteran status, which is giving them a certain legal status. And it cannot be done by MK per se. It's supposed to be done by the department as it is happening at the moment. And if we're going to try and cloud the two processes, we're going to end up flooding the system to a point that even the very benefits that we're getting now or intend getting in future will end up not getting it. Because if we check the numbers that are outside the system, that wants to come into the system compared to us that are in the system, sometimes if you compare, the numbers are bigger of people who are outside compared to the one that are inside. And if we check the issue of us and the budget and all other related things, I think we need to just take sentiments away and don't bog ourselves down as MK into this process, because we have failed as MK to attend to verification by ourselves. As MK, we failed to do the verifications. We've tried it as early as 2010 to do the verification within ourselves. And the same problem that are collapsing or are creating a crisis with our General Mashwala and all that, we're collapsing us when we're trying to do it within MK itself. Therefore, let's not try to bring it back to us, because if we bring it back to us, it's going to collapse us. It's going to make us more fight, because the problem is some of the people who say they want to be in the database, I think if you can listen to some of the stories, I'm not saying all of them, but if you listen to some of the stories that they present either to DMV or to the verification committee or to ourselves, do not warrant them to be military veterans. Yes, there are others who are supposed to be inside, like the comrades who are coming from outside who have been rejected. I've heard stories of comrades who have been in the death row who have been rejected and all that. Those are not exceptions. But I think and believe that as MK, this is a space that is outside ourselves. We have exhausted the process. Let's leave it to the legal space and ensure that we protect ourselves and protect the unity, the legal unity that we're still having as members of MK. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Woody. Commissioner Sally.
Thank you, Commissioner Malik. Yeah, I just want to say, we spoke about the issue of the ethics office, I believe, in the structures that we're going to form. And we only touched on the ethics office being responsible for issues of the code of conduct and screening and so on. But I think what is very important that should be played by this office is to ensure that it institutionalizes a culture of integrity in the MK association or organization, I don't know, whatever we call it. because we have said it already that this formation or organization is going to be responsible for empowering the ex-combatants economically, creating or facilitating business opportunities or economic opportunities for the comrades. So this already creates a risk of comrades being vulnerable to corruption, because corruption is so endemic in our society. So we cannot rule it out during the interaction of the comrades with the business side of things. So I'm saying then, to mitigate this risk, we need to ensure then that this office would be able to do, for instance, conduct ongoing ethics awarenesses within the formation or the association. We will have to come up with the values that we will espouse within this formation. So there needs to be continuous or ongoing ethics awareness, or conscientizing people about living the values. This is important because it's going to fortify the comrades against any attempt at corrupting them, or even themselves also, to make them build that resistance or resilience against temptation to corruption, because we know that nature does not allow any vacuum. So as long as there won't be any program that is aimed at capacitating comrades to be people of integrity, to conduct any business that they do with integrity, to ensure that they know what it is that constitutes conflicts of interest, so that we're not found wanting at some point. So we need to seal this organization from corruption. It's not going to happen on its own. So I do believe that this ethics office should not just be something that looks at the code of conduct, because what I know about our country, we're big on compliance. So we will make a code of conduct, we'll say, here's our code of conduct. And it will be just something that is in print, black and white, that is it. No one will know what it entails. No one will be conscientizing comrades about it. No one will be reminding anybody how it should be. So we need to do things differently. I believe, therefore, that in this office, we need to have comrades, not just because they are veterans, they are in the Veterans League, they are in the SACP, they should be in the space also of ethics. They should understand when we talk ethics, what it is that we're talking about. We have to be able, as we grow in this formation that we're building, to invite both Dr. Ruel Khoza and other gurus in this field to capacitate us into realizing exactly what it is we mean when we say a person of integrity, to conduct business with integrity, and so on and so on. Surely once we can do those things, we're not going to have problems of now we have to expel people because they have been found with their hands in the cookie jar and so on and so on. So that we build our conscience, Yeah, thank you, Dr. Malik.
Thanks, Commissioner. Wonderful point. Comrade Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Comrade Malik. I just want to raise two critical issues. Comrade Mpumi has sharply raised an issue of the survival of us as military veterans is dependent on the survival of the ANC. And if we are going to take that approach, we are going to face serious problems. And the decline of the ANC support has been a reality in front of our eyes. And it actually scares me, because if we take that route, we are definitely going to collapse. The ANC, given even the renewal program, we're not even sure we'll be going forward or back. But the decline of the ANC has been a reality. So we need to begin to really dig deeper into this question. That our survival cannot necessarily depend on the ANC when we have served the national cause. I think we are a national asset. We need to find a way of finding acceptance. You see, government has made provisions through the DMV or the Act itself. It's how we utilize the Act, or all current problems are just a reflection of how badly we're unable to utilize to reposition ourselves and take advantage of the Act. So I think we need to be able to then balance this discussion and go forward. The last one would be the issue of use of military uniform. I think it was there, but I don't think we've reflected on it. Is that we fall under the DMV and SANVA. Why are we then, for ceremonial purposes, not use the official military veterans uniform and the fatigue? It's something that we need to really look at correctly to say we can still perform the ceremonial still using the military veterans uniform. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Brian. Hi, Comrade Ruth.
Good evening, colleagues or comrades.
We are colleagues.
I have listened with keen interest on the presentations, and it's highly appreciated on what the colleague comrades have said. I'm a bit worried also that we are saying the collapse of the ANC will be the direct result of our collapse as a new structure. In my experience, MK has been the bone and support of the ANC in all facets. And I believe that if as MK we are going to give support to the ANC, then the ANC will never die. And this is from my experience. So I believe that we can revive the ANC, or the ANC can survive because of our support. That's one thing that I believe in. We have to support the ANC. We have to give support in all facets. That's one. The second one is the verification process. Comrades, it's a fact that some of us have contributed in ensuring that verification becomes a difficult or painful exercise. Our comrades are the ones who corrupted the CPR in the first place. And we find ourselves in this situation because of those comrades. And unfortunately, some of them are still alive. Maybe we need to tap on that, to say what role did they play in corrupting the CPR. On the same breath, we have the so-called people who are not in the or are not appearing in the CPR, and when you look at the age of those comrades, it's amazing to find a child of 81 or 89 saying he's a military veteran. I think the verification should also look at the age of the people who are claiming to be MK members or veterans. Maybe that can assist us a lot. The third part is on the question of women or female comrades, their role. I think, Dr. Malik, I am suggesting that maybe we need to have some mini conference as Umzana MK, because I think there are things that are unique to Umzana that we will need to discuss as Umzana before we go to the conference. I think it will be important, especially because not all of us have developed at the same level as Umzana. So we need that to ensure that we are singing from the same tune. I don't know how are we going are you going to assist us to ensure that we meet as Umzana and discuss those peculiarities before we go to the conference? Thank you so much. Thanks, colleagues.
Thanks, my dear. Thanks, Comrade Ruth. I do think that maybe when we share, you might have missed Commissar Saleh's paper last week. It does touch on some of the issues you're mentioning, including a request to actually have maybe during the conference, maybe a day or two before the conference for Umzana to trash out exactly what some of the issues talking about. She can always go in a bit of detail as far as that is concerned. Fidelito, go ahead, my leader.
Sir, I would like to start with the assertion that was made by Comrade Oti, that actually ANC and MK are one and the same brand. They are intertwined brands. You can't separate the two. So when we talk of EMK, we can't talk of it without referring to the ANC. So MK and ANC are two sides of the same coin. So it's critical that we actually take this into cognizance, especially if we want also the brand MK to survive. That the brand ANC must also survive. With regard to allegiance to the state, what Brian was raising, this has to be done through an official military veteran structure like SAMVA. And we have to be make sure that we are influential within the structure, so that the structure also advances our interest as the MK. So definitely we don't have a choice. As MK, we need to build the ANC and make it as effective as possible so that the brand MK should survive. And in relation to the state, SAMVA must be a structure that we also drive effectively as the biggest also military veterans entity, to make sure that SAMVA pursues our interest to the fullest. Then with regard to the issue of the presentation itself, I was concerned about the issue of education and training, because it appears like we didn't have any box that addresses the issue of education and training, unless maybe it's going to be included under the socio-economic box. But I think education and training is critical, especially for our descendants. We have to, pursue this jealously, that their education and training is not downplayed. And with regard to verification is a challenge. But I think we should move from the premise of EMCW. Military combat work taught us that there are three layers of a revolutionary army. One is the vanguard force of commanders, those who were trained and properly trained fully to become full commanders of MK. And then they have to reproduce themselves. That becomes then the second layer. Reproduction could be SDUs, could be Amabuto, could have been grenade squads that we saw in certain areas developed to use grenades, and also limbet mines and other weapon systems. But also, what we need to do which I think maybe might help in terms of making sure that the system or the process is not contaminated. Perhaps we should look at vetting, that the DI, Defense Intelligence structures, vetting can also assist in terms of making sure that the verification process is authentic and it's not contaminated by elements that were not supposed to be there. And fortunately enough, most of the people who are heading defense intelligence are also people who come from our ranks. This can be discussed with them, and we can see if they can be of assistance if needs be. Because if we allow the process to be contaminated by elements that are not necessarily people who were trained by our commanders, then we might sit with a problem in future, and it should be avoided at all costs. With regard to the issue of uniforms, because I also had the aspect about uniforms, the heritage commissariat or desk must actually address this issue of uniforms, because one of the elements that it has to deal with is the aspect of the Bureau of Heraldry. The Bureau of Heraldry deals with insignia, symbols, and uniforms, the nature of uniforms. That's why you find, for instance, if you look at the military veterans that are coming from these other forces in Europe or even with the SADF itself, they have specific symbols that identifies them, that they belong to a specific unit or battalion or whatever. So this is what we have to look at probably when we have this test, that we look at maybe saying each detachment must have its own insignia that identifies the person as maybe a Lutuli detachment, some maybe as a June 16, and the other detachments that follow from there. These can also assist in terms of making sure that we know who is who belongs where. But those are things that can be addressed as we go on. But I think it is very critical that we should have a common perspective when it comes to the wearing of uniforms, because what we see right now is really embarrassing, where you see somebody wearing a uniform with other items that not conform to a military dress code. So really, these are things that we need to also address as part of our heritage, making sure that we maintain our professionalism, as Commissar Malik was saying. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Commissar Castro. If you don't mind, Brian and Commissar Sali, can I just take quickly a new voice, Comrade Ish, quickly, and then you will go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Bimush.
Yeah, I only touched on the issue of people playing around with it's now time of looking at the separation of MK from the ANC. You know, my first response was it's a bit opportunistic. Now that the ANC is in some trouble, MK wants to stand outside and show us no, we are actually part of the state and not part of ANC. But then I listen to people's really serious arguments about it. So I'll be a little bit liberal to say that MK is a child of ANC. MK was formed by ANC when ANC had no other way but to put up the armed struggle. That's a historical fact. And we can never run away of that biblical cord between MK and ANC. Way up, we might just look at like the issue about the SDUs and train people to say that like what actually caused negotiation is the issue that we began to become a really people's soldier, mixing with the population, getting the support of the population. That actually, in a nutshell, was one of the biggest contributions to a negotiated settlement, where the opposing side felt that they have to stop this momentum, which our Tambo have set up. That of a really, truly people's army. You know, and we were there. Because remember, we were looking at like, other struggles internationally to see how can we infuse the concept of people's army. So we had many comrades coming up who were no longer prepared to go so far exile, but to get internal training. You see, and then some of us, then we were outside, we landed up in Botswana to get these comrades, to give them training and go back, you know. So, but that is what our opposition really wanted to stop, for us to be consolidated as a people's army within the masses of South Africa. You know? So we need, in a way, to recognize that. But at the same time, we need to find ways of not allowing people to take the opportunity of becoming false members of MK. See, I'm quite interested in what they are doing in the Western Cape in regard to this, because I think 5 years ago, there were attempts to get something, initiative together Western Cape, to recognize who are actually our internally trained men. But just to come back to the point of the negotiated settlement, I think there is where a lot of mess up have been done, particularly by our verification committees. You know, I almost left the defense at that time because I was like usually underranked in terms of my experience, but because of some comrades said, no, like we are needed in the defense force, I stayed, you know, but so that people who were internally trained were frustrated by virtue of our own people to swell the ranks of the South African Defence Force. So we landed up with an unresolved problem. And we, those who were in power at that time, thought, no, like the issue of the SDU will be washed away. It's now coming back to bite us, you know, because there are comrades who really did not get the recognition. Just example, there's a comrade who passed away last year, Cecil Iso. You know, the verification committee didn't want to recognize him, yet he was fully trained internally. He even went to Robben Island for MK activities, unlike the way Carol Nias, you know. But I had to say no that I was responsible for his training, and also that he came out to learn how to use the MK. But still, he was never accepted, and he only wanted money for his children. So, in short, there are a lot of, not a lot of people, but there are a good number of people who were never recognized. And we need to find a way around. I like what the comments have said, what needs to be done, but we must look at the practicality of it. Western Cape, they've done something, but in other areas, people are still struggling as to say, how are we going to deal with this monster? You see? So I think for me, that is critical to resolve that, to make sure that those who deserve to be recognized get that recognition. I will stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Brian? Comrade Brian, your hand, is it an old hand? Okay. You will come back to us when you can hear us because we can't hear you. Commissar Sally?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Malik. You know, I wanted to say the issue that Comrade Brian has raised is really critical, and I think we're not doing justice to it. The issue of our identity and that political affiliation. I would suggest that, you know, if we can just have a full session discussing our identity in terms of us continuing to be within the ANC or stand alone, taking advantage of the legislation. But I would really suggest if we can allow Commissar Brian to prepare a paper, just looking at that, and for also our comrades who feel contra views to present something so that we can really engage our thought processes because time is against us. My number two is the issue of the Military Veterans Act. To say, right now speaking, I don't know. After 6 years, I think inputs have been made into the Act. I don't know where it stands right now and whether the inputs that were made in 2014 and the ones that were made in 2018 are in the draft that has not yet gone to Parliament. Whether actually inputs are still allowed to be made before the Act goes there. I do believe that what we need to also occupy our minds with is to ensure that each and everything that we would want to see in the Act is really in the Act, so that if it really happens, God forbid, that the ANC loses its majority, we know that we are covered by the Act, so that it becomes difficult for whoever that will take over to not want to do things that the Act says they must do for us. So for me, what is really critical is to fix the Act while politics are the way they are today. My last one is a question. You talk about, the House is talking about the Council of Elders, and the Lutuli detachment is mentioned. How many members of Lutuli detachment do we have today? Because I think when we're in Gauteng, it's like they mentioned 2 members. So I think I need clarity there, because there is, for me and other comrades of my detachment, speaking for the Young Lions here, there is some sensitivity around the issue of the Council of Elders. This is another issue that we really need to talk about transparently so that we can understand. I submit. Thank you.
No, thanks, Commissar. Sorry. Thanks for that, and thanks, comrades, for your inputs. Maybe let's take Johnny so that at least we can also move towards rounding up and closing. Johnny, go ahead. We can't hear you, Johnny, if you are talking. You are muted. Johnny, you are muted.
Sorry, technology, man, technology.
Yeah, sure.
No. I didn't want to befuddle the discussions, but I want to raise just maybe 3 points, very short points. One of the points is that in whatever we are discussing, we must begin to craft proposed resolutions that should come out of the conference in a manner that we are able to begin to address the issues that we have raised, so that we go to the conference with resolutions prepared. That's number one. Number two, in my other life, I deal with issues of transformation of the heritage landscape, which include, but are not limited to, memorialization, naming and renaming of geographical features. Now, it's almost criminal that every time I see myself driving on John Foster Drive, which people call Mabopane Highway, and when you look at it on Google Map, the place, that Mabopane Highway is still John Foster Drive, and you still drive to Verwoerdberg via what? So the heritage landscape is untransformed, and this side, our heroes and heroines are not being honored because we are not doing enough to honor them. The other point that I want to raise before it escapes my mind is that we cannot transform our society and ourselves if we do not use the state machinery to transform the society and ourselves. So, in other words, it still remains our role as ex-combatants to transform the state machinery, meaning that we must transform the department in such a manner that it begins to address our issues, because the capacity to address these issues that we are raising lies with the state rather than with the political party. The last point, we must start thinking very hard. And remember, with or without the ANC, the revolution will continue. Now, I think it's about time that we separate the ANC as a political party and the ANC as a liberation movement. If we are talking about the possible death of the ANC, what we are actually saying is that we almost envisage the death of the ANC as a political party, the ANC losing state power. But does that mean that the ANC must then die as a revolutionary force, as a liberation movement? And if the answer to that question is no, in what form do we envisage us reviving the African National Congress? But here is my problem. We are now in the process of taking branches, which are non-existent in any case, to BPGMs to go and elect branch leadership and nominate regional and provincial leadership. But we haven't as yet taken stock of how far we have gone since the last national conference, because we did not have the NGC. And we might go to the next national conference without going to a policy conference. How do we then influence policy change if we are not taking stock of what we have done and we are not going to a national policy conference as an organization. So what I see is Malaysia's compliance, if you ask me. Let me rest there, Comrade Malik. But and say, as a passing short, it is said that the duration of a meeting is inversely proportional to production. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Johnny. Brian, is this an old hand or old new hand? Okay, you will come back to us when you can. Maybe just as a way of rounding up.
No, it is not a hand.
Sorry?
It is not a hand, my brother. It's not a hand.
Okay, sure. No, thanks, my brother. Yeah. Now, Commissioner Sally, one of the things that you mentioned is the issue of possibly a paper on the political identity. It's fundamentally an important issue. I do support that. I think it's something we should actually work on because it is fundamentally important. We have to learn from what's happening in the Western Cape. We have to learn from what's happening in Ekurhuleni and also in Johannesburg and Tshwane to see how those dynamics are actually impacting on some of the programs run by municipalities there, so that at least we can be able to see how does that actually has the potential of affecting us in the future. So we can't wait for that future in order to think about it. We have to think about it now. And of course, something else you also mentioned is the issue of inputs into the Military Veterans Act. We can potentially ask someone from the PTT to actually give us clarity on this specific issue and see how can we contribute in that process. My last personal engagement with them was December last year, January this year. They did say we still had hope. I mean, it was still possible for us to submit submissions there. So I think it's a good point that we need to secure our base there in the state and make sure that it is actually quite perfect, perfectly secured. Comrade Johnny, the issue of resolutions, proposed resolution, you are correct. One of the things that we hope to achieve out of all these processes is that we're raising these issues so that comrades can start engaging with them, on them, and then we produce these proposed policy documents, and hopefully we will actually make them public. I mean, like we'll probably just create, we do have some website in any case from an advocacy point of view where we can actually attach these for comrades to actually further input on them in a way so that we can then get the help of people like yourself and others who have got experience on drafting conference resolutions. And then from those proposed policy positions, we can then try and have those proposed resolutions, as you say. By the time we get to the conference, then at least we know, we're proposing this resolution and based on this policy proposal. The idea is to canvass broadly and is to also make sure that we're as transparent as possible. So that's effectively that. Now, comrades, I don't want us to spend more time. Tongo, is this an old or new hand? Omri?
It's a new hand. It's a new hand.
Okay, let me give you an opportunity, my chief, to do it quickly. I know you're always short.
Yeah, I think just two comments. One is that there's a difference between ANC losing elections and ANC dying. So those two things are not the same. And so we must understand it that way because it's not the same thing. We lost the last municipal elections, but the ANC is still around. So we should make that difference in our thinking and in our mind. The other thing is just a comment, the comrade in the Western Cape, Comrade Regan. I want you, Comrade Regan, to answer yourself as to why in the Western Cape the ANC has lost elections and continues to lose elections every day. Until you can answer that question honestly to yourself, you cannot understand this problem, because you have to address that question honestly to yourself, why the ANC has lost the Western Cape. Okay, thank you very much. I'll leave it there.
No, thanks, Comrade Mhlongo. Comrades, I just want to thank everybody else here for today, and specifically Commissars Brian and Johnny Mutala for their wonderful contribution and hard work. And I think, of course, everybody else had actually a lot to say. I know, Abdul, you still have probably more to say, and of course, other comrades. We will try and make the presentation of these two comrades available. Please look at it as ideas and then consolidate them so that at least we all own these ideas. We enrich them. And I mean, from a clerical point of view, I will actually just coordinate all of that, and then I will then be able to give it to the comrades so that at least they can reflect, and then possibly they can use it to enrich the document so that it is our document. So I just want to thank you for your time. You could have been somewhere else, but you decided to be here with us. And let's just keep the ball rolling and let's not lose the energy. There is nobody else who's going to solve these problems other than us. We are here for ourselves, and that's what it is. Thank you very much, comrades. Amanda, have a great evening.
We too, Amanda.
Hey,
Thank you. Good night.
good night. Looks like we've got lots of kids here. No more young lions, eh? Only kids. We've got old kids.
Good night.
They're not rowing anymore. There's no row. Yeah, there's a like meow.
They can't row anymore.
Yeah, no, they can't row anymore. So,
Hello, good night. Thank
good
you.
night, comrades. Have a good one. Cheers. Bye.